Les verbes réguliers. Partie A, les verbes en ER. In French, there are three categories of regular verbs. We're going to take a look at the most common category of verbs, verbs that end in ER verbs. Let's first look at how to use these in sentences. When we want to use them in sentences, we need to conjugate the ER verb or change its spelling. To conjugate an ER verb, to use it in a sentence, first we'll find the stem. In order to do that, we need to take off the final two letters, take off that ER. So what that means is these verbs, parler, jouer, aimer, écouter, étudier, and acheter, to use them in a sentence, we'll need just the stem, which are the letters that are left over without the ER. So you can take a look at these. If we take off the ER, this is what the stem of these verbs would look like. Then when we use it in a sentence, we'll have to add the appropriate ending. Each subject pronoun has its own ending. So when je is our subject, we'll add an E to that ending, to that stem. When tu is the subject, we'll end it with ES. If il, elle, ou on is the subject, we'll add an E to the stem. For nous, we'll add the ending of ONS. Vous, EZ, and il and elle, pluriel, we'll add the ending of ENT. ENT. I think it's important to note right there that ENT is always silent. We write it, but we don't say it. Some verbs are regular ER verbs, but they are considered to be stem changers. What this means is they take the same ER verb endings, but there are slight spelling changes that happen within the letters that make up the stem. So let's take a look at the verb acheter, which is an example of a stem changing verb. The verb acheter means to buy. And in the forms of the verb acheter, when we use it in a sentence, first of all, remember, because it starts with a vowel, we won't use je, we'll use J apostrophe. And what happens is there's an accent that is added to the stem. It still takes the regular ER verb endings of es, ons, z, and ent, but with the forms of je, tu, il, elle, on, and il and elle pluriel, an accent grave is added to the E in the stem, but the nous and the vous form remain like the infinitive. I like to call these verbs Snoopy verbs because if you circle those forms that the accent is added on, it actually kind of looks like Snoopy's head. And that's characteristic of Snoopy verbs. The nous and the vous form always remain like the infinitive, but a spelling change happens with all of the other forms. The verb préférer is another Snoopy verb, another verb where the nous and the vous form look like the infinitive, but all of the other forms have a slight change. Préférer means to prefer, and if you take a look at the forms of préférer, we have je préfère, tu préfères, il préfère, nous préférons, vous préférez, il, elle préfère. So that second E in the je form, the tu form, the il and elle singulier, and il and elle pluriel, a second E actually changes from having an accent aigu to an accent grave. But if you look in the nous and the vous form, they follow the suit of the infinitive. Commencer is another stem changing verb, but unlike acheter and préférer, the change here only happens in the nous form. Commencer means to start, and if you look at the forms of commencer, je commence, tu commences, il commence, elle commence, vous commencez, il commence, they all have the same endings, but what happens is the nous form, we have to add the accent cedilla before the ONS, and we do this simply for pronunciation. A C followed by an O in French gets a K sound, like a K. But because the infinitive of commencer has the C pronounced like an S, we have to add that cedilla to keep the pronunciation the same as the infinitive. So with the verb commencer, we only have to remember to add the cedilla in the nous form. All the other forms are conjugated just like any other ER verb. Manger kind of follows the same suit. Manger, to eat, takes regular ER verb conjugation. The nous form, tu form, il, elle, singulier, vous form, il, elle, pluriel are all conjugated like any other ER verb, but it's the nous form that we have to look at and remember this extra little rule. Before the ONS in the nous form, we have to add the letter E. And again, we do this for pronunciation. The letter G in French followed by the letter O is going to be a G sound, but because in the verb manger, the G sounds like je, we have to add the letter E to keep that pronunciation mangeons, like the infinitive manger. Now, there are lots of ER verbs that we have learned and lots more that we will learn. But let's take a quick look at some of the ones that we learned last year and what they mean. We learned téléphoner, to call. We learned écouter, to listen to. Étudier, to study. Travailler, to work. Adorer, to love. Jouer, to play. Manger, to eat. Nager, to swim. Voyager, to travel. And before I go into the next one, I think it's important to note that since nager and voyager also end in a G before the ER, you'll do the same thing that you would do with manger, where you add the E before the O and S. So put a little star in your notes by nager and voyager to help you remember to add that E in the new form. We also learned discuter avec des amis, to chat with friends, and étudier again. I guess I wanted to stress that one. And lastly, surfer sur internet. And like I said, this is not a complete list. There's many more that we learned, many more that we will learn, but all of these follow the regular ER verb endings that we went over earlier. Most common verb forms, so we have to remember how to conjugate these verbs.